Good day, my name is Darius Cruz, a member of group number 5. We will discuss the myth of Cupid and Psyche, a story only told by Apuleius, initially in his Metamorphosis, books 4 to 6, The Golden Ass. But we use the book Mythology, Timeless Tales of Gods and Heroes, 75th Anniversary Illustrated Edition as a reference of the myth. First and foremost, who are Cupid and Psyche? As we all know, Cupid is the god of love, and we know him by his symbol, an arrow piercing 2 hearts. But Psyche? We'll get to know her as we continue with the story. Once a king had 3 lovely daughters, and the youngest Psyche stands out among them. Born with physical perfection, her beauty was comparable, and some say even greater than Venus, the goddess of beauty herself. People were happy to travel from far-off places to see and adore Psyche's beauty. Those who worshipped Psyche had grown in numbers, forgetting the true goddess of beauty, Venus, leaving her temple in ruins and abandoned. Venus did not accept this treatment for her being neglected. She always resorted to her son Cupid, ordering him to use his power against Psyche. His ability, whose arrows can pierce through everyone's heart, that even heaven and earth can do nothing against him. Venus instructed Cupid to make Psyche fall in love with the vilest creature on earth. Venus did not think of what Psyche's beauty can do to a god. As Cupid saw Psyche, he was struck at the beauty of the mortal as if he shot his own heart with his own arrow. Psyche did not fall in love with any creature at all. Mortal human lovers were too intimidated to approach her, receiving no romantic feelings from anyone. Men are contented just by looking at her, then continuing with their life marrying someone else. She lived in solitude, only admired but never loved. Her father asked for guidance from the oracle of Apollo. Prophecy told Psyche's father to abandon her on a high hilltop, where she should marry a cruel serpent-like winged creature. Alone on the hilltop, Psyche felt Saphir, the west wind, lifting her into the air and bringing her down before a palace. A place looking like it was explicitly built for the gods. The surrounding was filled with silence as Psyche hesitated to enter the threshold. A voice sounded in her ear saying, "You are home. Your husband awaits you in the bedroom if you dare to meet him."
While she dined, sweet music breathed around her. A great choir seemed to sing to a harp, but she could only hear, not see them. Throughout the day, except for the strange companionship of the voices, she was alone. But in some inexplicable way, she felt sure that with the coming of the night, her husband would be with her. And so it happened. When she felt him beside her and heard his voice softly murmuring in her ears, all her fears left her. She knew without seeing him that there was no monster or shape of terror, but the lover and husband she had longed and waited for. This half-and-half companionship could not fully content her. Still, she was happy and time passed swiftly. One night, however, her dear though unseen husband spoke to her and warned her that danger in the shape of her 2 sisters was approaching. He told Psyche that they are coming to the hill where she disappeared, to weep for her, but she must not let them see her, or to bring great sorrow upon him and ruin to Psyche. She promised him she would not, but all the next day she passed in weeping, thinking of her sisters and being unable to comfort them. She was still in tears when her husband came, and he was not able to comfort her. At last he yielded. "Do what you will," he said, "but you are seeking your own destruction." Then he warned her not to be persuaded by anyone to try to see him, or they would be separated forever. Psyche cried out that she would never do so. He would die 100 times over rather than live without him. Next morning the 2 came, happy and excited. Psyche was waiting for them, but when at last they entered the palace and the elder sister saw its surpassing treasures, Bitter envy took possession of them, and a devouring curiosity as to who was the lord of all this magnificence and their sister's husband. But Psyche kept faith. She told them only that he was a young man, away now on a hunting expedition. All their own wealth and good fortune seemed to them as nothing compared with Psyche's, and their envious anger so worked in them that they came to finally plotting how to ruin her. That very night, Psyche's husband warned her once more. She would not listen when he begged her not to let them come again. She could never see him, she reminded him. Was she also forbidden to see all others, even her sisters dear to her? He yielded as before, and very soon the two wicked women arrived, with their plot carefully worked out. Already, because of Psyche's stumbling and contradictory answers when they asked her what her husband looked like, they had become convinced that she had never set eyes on him and did not really know what he was. They reproached her for hiding her terrible state from them. They knew for a fact that her husband was not a man, but the fearful serpent Apollo's oracle had declared he would be. He was kind now, no doubt, but he would certainly turn upon her some night and devour her. Psyche, horrified, felt terror flooding her heart instead of love. There must be some dreadful reasons why he would never let her see him. If he was not horrible to look at, then he was cruel to forbid her ever to behold him, and she begged them to advise her.
Psyche's sister had their advice all prepared beforehand. They planned to kill Cupid at night. Psyche must hide a sharp knife and a lamp near her bed, and when Cupid was asleep, she will leave the bed and light the lamp and get the knife to plunge in swiftly into Cupid's body. "We will be near and carry you away with us when he is dead," said by her sisters. Her sisters left her torn by them. Things in her mind was battling. Should she do this or this? She loved him. He was her dear husband. Throughout the day, her thoughts fought with each other. But when the evening comes, she made up her mind. She wants to see him. When Cupid was finally sleeping, Psyche gathered all her courage and lit the lamp. Holding the lamp over her, she gazed at Cupid and felt relieved when no monster came out, but a creature who shined brighter than the lamp. Due to shame at her folly and lack of faith, Psyche fell on her knees and planned to plunge the knife on her breast, but it had fallen from her trembling hands. Her hand that saved her had betrayed her as well. While she was gazing at Cupid, not denying to herself the bliss of filling her eyes with his beauty, the hot oil from the lamp fell on Cupid's shoulder, and he woke up. He saw the light and knew Psyche's faithlessness, and without a word, he fled from her. She rushed out after him. She couldn't see him, but she can hear him speaking to her. Cupid told her he was and sadly bid her farewell. Love cannot live where there is no trust, and he flew away. Psyche realized that her husband was the god of love and asked if he was gone from her forever. Psyche said that she can spend her whole life searching for him. Before starting her journey, she uttered these words: "If he has no love for me, at least I can show him how much I love him." And from there, she don't know where she would go, but she knows she will never stop finding him. Cupid, on the other side, went to his mother's chamber to have his wound cared for. But Venus learned that it was Psyche that he had chosen. So Venus left him alone and went forth to find Psyche, who he made her more jealous. Poor Psyche was trying to win the gods over her side. She offered them ardent prayer perpetually, but none of them wants to take Venus as their enemy. In the end, she knew that there was no hope for her in heaven and in earth, and took desperate resolve. She planned to go straight to Venus. She would make herself the servant of Venus and try to soften her anger. And she thought, who knows if Cupid's not there at her mother's house? And so she did, the goddess who was looking for her as well. When Psyche came into Venus, the goddess laughed and asked her if she was seeking for a husband, since the one he had almost died of the burning wound she had given to him. Venus degraded Psyche. She told Psyche things that can hurt her whole being and told her that she will show her goodwill and train her in such good ways. With that, she took the smallest seeds like wheat, poppy, and so on and mixed them all together. She told her that by night, those seeds must all be sorted, and she disappeared. Psyche left and sat alone. She stared at the heap. Her mind was amazed because of cruelty of command, because indeed there was no sense to start the task because it's clearly impossible. But in this moment, she who was born with no compassion in mortals and immortals was pitied by the ants. They cried to each other and said, "Come, have mercy on this poor maid and help her diligently." And then waves of ants came. They labored, separating and dividing, and they finished the order. Venus came, and this was what she found. She was very angry, and she said that Psyche's work is by no means over. Venus gave Psyche a crust of bread and told her to sleep on the ground, while she will sleep in her soft couch, because she believed that if Psyche had hard labor and half-starve her, her hateful beauty will soon be lost. Until then, he made sure that Cupid was securely guarded in his chamber, where he was still suffering from her wound. Venus was delighted with how things were progressing.
Because of Psyche's success in doing an impossible task, Venus devised another task that will risk the mortal's life. She instructed her to go down near the river bank where the sheep with fleeces of gold feast, and fetch some of the shining wool for her. When Psyche reached her destination, she felt suicidal and bent over the water. While doing so, she heard a tiny cry from a green reed near her feet. It stopped her from her ill thoughts and gave her instructions on how she can accomplish her task. The green reed advised her to wait for the fierce sheep to come out of the bushes toward evening to rest beside the river. Go into the thicket and collect the golden wool hanging on the sharp briars. Psyche followed the directions of the green reed and got back to Venus with her requested shining fleece. Venus didn't expect Psyche to come back alive and even accomplish the deadly task she gave her. Not giving up the idea of the mortal beauty having an accomplice, she gave another task for Psyche to prove her love and right to be with Cupid. Do you see that black water which falls from that hill? Fill this flask with the water flowing from the river Styx. The troubled human approached the waterfall and concluded that the winged creature is the only one capable of doing the task. After all the trials given by the goddess, it was evident that there is always someone that would help Psyche. As her savior, an eagle grabbed the flask from her hand with his beak and filled it with black water. Venus didn't stop from her evil plan. She gave Psyche a box that she has to carry to the underworld and asked Proserpine to fill it with some of her beauty because she needed it after taking care of her sick son. Psyche obliged and looked for the road to Hades. She passed a tower and met her guide. It gave her instructions on how to get to Proserpine's palace. First through a great hole in the earth, then down to the river of death, where she must give the ferryman Charon a penny to take her across. From there, The road will lead her to the palace. It was guarded by the three-headed dog Cerberus, but it would be friendly and let her pass if she gave him a cake. Psyche followed the directions given to her, and she was able to go inside the palace. Proserpine was willing to do Venus a service, and Psyche brought back the box with some of Proserpine's beauty.
On her way towards giving the box to Venus, she was filled with curiosity. She opens the box to see what a beauty charm looks like, and maybe use a little for herself. But, to her sharp disappointment, it was empty. Then she instantly falls into a heavy sleep. Meanwhile, Cupid was completely healed of his wound and now longing for Psyche. It is a difficult matter to keep love imprisoned, so he managed to escape through the window and started to look for Psyche. Then he finally found her sleeping near the palace and awakens her by putting the sleeping spell back in the box. While the joyful Psyche hastened on her errand, Cupid flew up to Olympus. He wanted to assure that Venus will no longer give them any trouble. Therefore, he went straight to Zeus. The father of gods and men consented at once to all that Cupid asked. Even though, he said, "You have done me great harm in the past. Seriously, my good name and my dignity by making me change into a bull and a swan and so on. However, I cannot refuse you." Then he called a full assembly of the gods and announced to all that Cupid and Psyche were formally married, and that he proposed to bestow immortality upon the bride. Mercury brought Psyche into the palace of the gods, and Zeus personally gave her the ambrosia to taste, which made her immortal. And this completely changed the situation, where Venus could not object to a goddess for her daughter-in-law. So that all came to a happy ending. Love in the soul, for that is what Psyche means, had sought, and after sore trials found each other, and that union could never be broken.
Now we've come to the last part, the analyzation. Now we will be interpreting the story of Cupid and Psyche as a disguised philosophy or allegory, wherein exquisite and fascinating stories has its own version of deep truths behind its impeccable visuals and exterior paint. To give a brief symbolism, let's start from the Cupid's name, which is also known as love. On the other hand, Psyche, which is the symbol of soul, where in fact these two characters has become the face of the abstract concept of love and soul and their relationship. To see is to believe, people say. This story proves this old proverb is accurate since the beginning. This is especially true and visible when it comes to religious faith and those people who are skeptical of the existence of a supreme being simply because they haven't seen it.
Here are some pieces of wisdom shared through the story. It was also mentioned in the first part of the story that Psyche, although admired by many, was loved by none. Other men only admired Psyche for her beauty, but love sees right through the soul. Love cannot live where there is no trust, said Cupid, quite literally. It means that he doesn't want to live with Psyche because of her doubting her. But it also means that love will never exist without trust. It is a difficult matter to keep love imprisoned. Although it means it is hard to stop Cupid from running away, it also symbolizes how love cannot be stopped, nor contained by any force. The soul, as portrayed by many philosophers, is something that with enough will could conquer many challenges. This is exactly how Psyche was illustrated in this story. She was willing to do every task Venus asked for her, despite not knowing if she would succeed in doing so. She took chances, risked ones, all because she is trying to reach Cupid. The trials faced by Psyche symbolize the soul's struggle to find happiness. Happiness can't be purely given to you. You need to work hard for it. It shows how humans are capable to sacrifice and do anything to prove their love, even if there is no assurance. It also shows how Psyche got lucky and blessed by the gods, as there is always someone who is helping her to accomplish her task. A green reed, an eagle, and a guide she met help her prove how she can do anything for Cupid. Although the main philosophy of the story teaches that there is no love without Christ, in the last part of the story it highlights another important lesson. Love forgives. Psyche may have doubted Cupid and in a sense betrayed him. She has repented and has proven herself to him. Though he has every right to just leave Psyche sleep to death, she tried to kill him after all. However, he forgave and saved her, because that is what you do when you love, you forgive.
Now, thank you for lending your time and ears to listen and know the beautiful story of Cupid and Psyche. Have a nice day and God bless to all of us.